Now then all, how you doing? It's Andy Cunningham, Syngenta triallist. You find me at the Doncaster Ryegrass focus site on the 4th of June, and more specifically you find me in the cultivation zone because it is pretty much 3 months to the day that I put various things into the ground to try and show you just how healthy the different cultivation type soil is. And I did that by, well, it's easier to watch the previous video I did, but I did this by putting some cotton baby suits. Cotton is obviously an organic material. If you've got any microbial activity in the soil, it'll break down that cotton, or the theory being that anyway. But the other method was using the tea bag method, and that's where we put green and red tea into the ground. Green tea has got a lower carbon to nitrogen ratio than the red tea, which has got a higher one. If you've got any sort of activity in there, whether it's high or low, the green tea will break down. It's used more as an indicator to make sure we have activity in the soil. But because we've got high carbon to nitrogen ratio in the red tea, only a healthier soil will be able to break that down sufficiently. Now, we'll be able to extrapolate the numbers because I weighed the tea bags before they went in. But without getting carried away too far, I want to talk to you about what happened to the baby suits. Now, before I did this video, I thought I'll save you time watching me dig it up. So I thought I'll dig everything up and then have a better idea of what I'm going to talk to you about on this video. Now, unfortunately, the cotton baby suits didn't show much at all. Now, on the right hand side, we've got the conventional tillage, so the ploughed area versus the reduced tillage or non-plough. And you can see there's actually hardly any difference between them two baby suits, which, if I only did that one, would indicate that we don't have much activity. Now, that wouldn't surprise me, because when we put these suits into the ground back on the 3rd of March, from between there and now, we had a grand total of 27 mil of rain. And you compare that to how it looked back in 2019, we had 80 mil, so more than double the amount of rainfall that we've had over the last 3 months. Now, research tells us that as the level of moisture in the soil decreases, so does the level of activity by the microbial organisms. So the baby suits thing doesn't surprise me at all. However, when I did dig up the tea bags, these two are from the conventional tillage area, so the ploughed. There is a significant difference between the green tea, which is almost broken down completely by the feels of it, versus the red tea, which is hardly broken down at all. So that does tell us that we have some level of activity in this soil, which does fill me with some positivity to think that we might actually get something of interest from this trial. Now, what I am going to do is, because like I said, I weighed these tea bags before they went into the ground, I'll be able to go back to my lab, which is otherwise known as my kitchen, weigh them again, and I'll be able to put the numbers in, extrapolate the data, and I'll be able to tell you exactly which of the cultivation types was the most healthy. So I'll see you back in my lab. Right then, so we've made it back to my house with the tea bags, but we also need to make sure they're as dry now as they were when they went into the soil when I weighed them as well. So I need to stick them in the airing cupboard overnight, and then we'll weigh them tomorrow, okay? Right then, so what we need to do now though is find the average weight of a bag, tea and tag, because obviously when we weighed the bags prior, we obviously weighed it all together. We need to know the weight of that, just the actual tea itself. So I've got a couple of spare bags. I'll tip the tea out and we can weigh the bags, find the average and take that away from the weight of the bags that went into the ground. Well, that's easy enough. They all weigh 0.25, so that makes my maths a little bit easier. So let's go and get the bags out of the airing cupboard. I think they've dried long enough, and we can get to the actual weighing. Oh. Right, there we go, that's long enough. They've dried overnight. And as you can see, this first tea bag's nice and dry. So it's replicated to how it was when it went into the ground. So all we need to do, snip the bag, tip out the tea, and find out how much is left. So see you back in the kitchen. Right then, here we are, the main event. So we've got the conventional tea bags on the left and the reduced tillage on the right. We've got the green tea and the red tea. And obviously, I'll record the weight of the tea when I've cut them open. So let's get to it. Now I'll do the red tea. So that's the conventional side done. Seem to be consistent with the weight, so hopefully that means something. Let's see if we get any difference with the reduced. Seems to be definitely more tea into the green tea bags left in there, which I hope that makes sense. So maybe that's suggesting we're getting more activity in the conventional, but without rushing towards a conclusion too early, let's get to the red tea first. And there doesn't seem to be much difference in the red tea, so like I say, let's go extrapolate the data and see what we get. So let's get to numbers. So I've travelled down the A1 to a lovely place called Loddington in Leicestershire. It's almost nicer than Doncaster, but yeah, and I'm down here to meet Dr. Jenny Bussell. Thanks for joining us. She works for the Wildlife and Game, have I got the right word?
Conservation Trust, yeah.
Yes, and she's also involved in the Allerton Project, aren't you? Where, what do you do?
So the Allerton Project is a research and education farm, and we do training and we do field trials, and we have a visitor centre so people can come and see our field trials. And on our trials we look at things like different cultivation types and how we can farm more sustainably. In my particular interest, I'm interested in how we can protect our soil health, so I measure things like earthworm numbers, and we measure greenhouse gases coming off from our different cropping types, so we can see what the impact of how we cultivate our land and how we look after our land has on our soil health.
Perfect. So you sound perfectly placed to look into the results that we got from the Doncaster Ryegrass Centre.
I hope so.
Perfect. So you've told us about the sort of things that you do, but can you also tell us why it's important to keep our soils as healthy as we can and the benefits that can bring?
So soil health is absolutely crucial in terms of your farm and your sustainability of your farm. So without soil health, you'll find you can't have the productivity that you need in order to have a profitable farm, especially as the years go on.
Right.
We are interested in things like maintaining your organic matter in your soil, because that's what is the habitat for all of the soil life. So things like your microbial organisms, and it feeds your earthworms. And they're what actually are the engineers of the soil. They give you that good soil structure. They turn over the nutrients so that they're available for the plants, and that helps with things like water retention, water infiltration, so the draining of the soil when you have wet weather. And also, yeah, because they hold the water in that organic layer, they can help deal with droughts, which we had a couple of weeks ago, and can help you weather some of the difficult conditions we've had in farming.
So it's important, the cultivations that you do regards to getting a crop in the ground. Just to recap you, Jenny, at the site we did a conventional till, so we ploughed and then para-harrowed, but we also did a reduced till where we just put some tines through to alleviate the compaction. Now, the site is looking very stark in the sense that the conventional till is well established, as opposed to the reduced till where it hasn't so. But looking at the results that we got from the tea bag test, can you tell us now which was the most healthier of the two different types of soil?
So the tea bag test gives you two indices. It gives you something called K, which is the rate of breakdown of that plant material. So the tea bag is just a little sample of plant material you've buried in the soil to see what happens to that plant material. How fast it's broken down is your K, and it also gives you another measurement called S, which is your stability.
Yes.
And the stability is how much of that organic matter, which could have broken down, didn't completely break down and disappear, but actually remained in the soil as organic matter, and that's your stability factor. If you have a high stability factor, you're going to be building up organic matter in your soil because it's going in as plant material and staying there as organic matter that's stable in the soil, which, remember I said, is really important as a source of that microbiology community.
Yes.
In order to give you good soil structure and good soil health.
Okay.
Your tea bag in the reduced cultivation did have a slightly higher stability factor, so
there
it
you go.
shows that by reducing those cultivations you've been protecting some of those microorganisms that help stabilise.
So although we didn't get much of a crop, we've retained a more healthier soil.
You're very slowly building that organic matter layer,
Okay.
and as you build the organic matter layer you're going to be building those soil biology community, and you're going to be building that soil structure. The problem with reduced cultivation, is that it takes a long time in order to build that organic matter.
Yeah.
It can take years.
So we're at year one.
You're at year one.
So,
but this tea bag test has shown you that year one has done something.
Yes.
You are on the right track, and
Yes.
that if you carry on that way, that slow stabilising of the plant material will turn into organic matter. The bonus is when that organic matter is stabilised in the soil, it's not being released as CO2 into the atmosphere, so it's not being released as a global warming gas.
Which is what we're all worried about.
Which is what we're all worried about.
Yes.
And one of the ways we can tackle climate change and global warming is by sequestering that carbon in the soil. So that means taking carbon that's locked up in plant material, putting it in the soil and making sure it stays there. Right. And that stability factor is all about telling how much of that carbon is staying in the soil and not being released as CO2.
Okay, that's really interesting. So the conventional way of doing it is a short-termism in a way, I suppose. We've got a crop this season, which is what a lot of growers might not have done with regards to their winter cropping. But if you're looking long-term, if we can try and keep the plough to a minimum, that is ideal.
Yeah.
And build up them populations of the microorganisms and the earthworms. Perfect, that's great. So thank you very much, Jenny, for summarising that. Much better than I could have done, I'm afraid. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you soon.